Is my screen visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So good morning, everyone. So we'll start with the next content in the casting process. So we have been discussing about the casting process in a bit detail up till now. So we have discussed the different aspects of the casting process. We have discussed some of the applications. We have discussed the sand casting process in more detail, elaborating different parts what are used in different in the sand casting. Then we have discussed about the different types of allowances which are provided on the pattern or during creating the cavity. So today we will discuss what is the molding, what is molding sand, what are its composition and properties. So, so mold is basically the most important part in any casting process pertaining to especially the expendable mold casting process like sand casting. So sand casting process, in the sand casting process, the mold is the object which creates, in which the cavity is created using a pattern. So this mold, it is made up of generally sand in case of sand casting process, but it can also be made up of other materials like metal or plaster of Paris or epoxies, etc. But this sand casting process is very common and more commonly used. So this we will discuss in more detail about these type of molds. Subsequently, once we complete it, we will discuss some of the casting processes where you will see that other types of molds are also being used. So in this regard, the sand casting process mold or the sand mold is basically a single use mold. So it is mentioned here in the slide that just a minute. What happened here? Why this? Yeah. So it is mentioned here as sand casting. So it is basically the single use mold. So this means that for every product which is cast, the mold it is a single use. Means for every new product which we make, we have to make a new mold. So after every single casting, the mold is destroyed to remove the product. Then we have multi-use uh, molds, which basically are uh, the molds which can be used for many products to be cast. So such molds are made up of metal or graphite, but cost of producing this mold is only justified when there is large production volume. So this means that whenever we are producing parts in large numbers, only in that scenario the multi-use molds are justified because of their high cost of production. So most commonly, it is the sand casting mold which is encountered because of its low cost. As sand is a very easy to obtain material, and at the same time, it has a property of refractoriness, that is, the ability to hold its shape even at elevated temperatures as it comes in contact with the molten metal. So sand, in particular here, the green sand is the most commonly used material for the mold. So this green sand is basically sand comprising of sand, mixture of sand, clay, water, and additives. So we will be discussing what are these different additives, what is the percentage of clay, what is the percentage of water, and subsequently we will also discuss what is the role of each of these components. Then they are metal-based molds. So these, as you the name is itself indicating, so these molds are made up of metals. So these are used for multiple use. So means we cannot use them as a single time, but for multiple uses, these type of molds are there. Then plaster of Paris or gypsum, these are also used in special casting processes. Ceramics are also there, and graphite and rubber are also used in some of the low melting point castings, but most commonly it is with the sand which is used as a molding material. So we will discuss in more details what are the characteristics of this molding sand. So I mentioned in the last slide that it is green sand. So what is this green meaning? So green meaning, the meaning of green here is that the sand is basically is laden with moisture. So moisture is added basically by adding water. So this when the sand is holding this moisture, so this is known as the green sand, not sand. So first important property of this molding sand is basically refractoriness. So refractoriness, as we have also earlier studied, what is refractoriness? So refractoriness is the ability of the material to withstand high temperature. So in this case, the sand is basically having this property to withstand very high temperatures, and it does not fuse upon coming in contact with the molten material. So this means we won't be facing any issues of the sand getting melted even when it comes in contact with high temperature. The next is cohesiveness. So what is cohesiveness? So cohesiveness is basically the ability of the molding sand to be bonded together. Bonded together means together among themselves. So if you have the sand particles, so generally the sand particles, they have very rough shape. They are not perfectly spherical. So they have this ability. Yeah, this Kamal Singh, can you mute your mic? Kamal Singh. Okay. So the sand particles, they are very, roughly shaped. So because of these roughly shaped particles, when you press them together, so they have this ability to hold themselves together. So this property of holding or ramming when they are pressed together. So ramming is basically the process of, you put the sand in the mold, say in the drag. This is the drag. Sorry. And here are the sand particles. So ramming is the process when you press them together. And when the sand particles are pressed together, so they have the ability to hold the shape among themselves. So this is because essentially the surface of this sand particle is quite rough. So that gives the cohesiveness to the sand particles. Next is the permeability. So permeability is basically the property of this sand to allow the molten gases to pass. So all these gases which are absorbed in the molten material, so they have to be removed, and the sand has this property of basically allowing these gases to escape out to the surroundings. So this property of the sand is known as the permeability. So permeability is also a function of sand particles size, then the amount of clay, then the moisture content and compacting pressure which is used during ramming. Next important property is collapsibility. So collapsibility is the ability of collapsing, means collapsing here indicates basically to shrinking. After the solidification to facilitate the contraction. Otherwise, if this collapsibility is not there, so in that case, what is going to happen that defects like tears or cracks will be produced on the cast product. So I will explain in bit more detail how this collapsibility helps. So we see here that if these are the sand particles, so sand, as I mentioned, sand will also have the some binders in it. So you consider the blue particles as the binders. Okay. So red is considered as the sand. So these binders, what are these? Binders are organic particles like sawdust. So blue is the binder. So what happens? These are organic particles like sawdust. So this sawdust, it has a very low melting point, or it burns very quickly. So this is what happens when the sawdust is there. It burns very quickly. So what will happen when you will pour the molten metal in the sand mold? Because of high temperature, the binder will get burned off. So this will get removed because of getting burned off, and these sand particles, when then they will shrink as the binder in between them is removed by burning. So this shrinking property of the sand is known as the collapsibility, and this collapsibility basically facilitates the contraction, which also happens because when the material molten metal solidifies, so a contraction takes place, and the sand should also basically support that contraction. And if that does not happen, so tears or cracks type of defects are then developed in the cast product. Next is the flowability. So flowability is the property of this molding sand to flow around the pattern to acquire the desired shape during molding. Because if you remember, so if we have this type of the arrangement in the drag and cope, I'm drawing here only the drag, and you have some uh, split pattern here. So ability of this sand to basically flow around this pattern in while it is getting rammed or in the mold flask. So this ability is known as flowability. It means the sand should easily flow around the pattern so that it can take the desired shape during molding. Next is the green strength. So green strength is the ability of the sand to retain the shape, and it is same as in the dry condition. So green, I already mentioned what is green strength. So green strength is when the sand is holding some moisture. So at that time, it should be able to hold the shape of the mold. So this is also determined to take the metallostatic forces. So metallostatic forces are the forces which are developed due to shrinkage upon solidification, shrinkage in the molten metal. So these forces which are developed are known as the metallostatic forces. Then next is the hot strength. So hot strength is the ability of the sand to hold the shape even at high temperature. So high temperature will come when the molten material is poured and it is still in the liquid state. Adhesiveness. So adhesiveness is the property of the molding sand to adhere to the molding flask and pattern. So this flask which is there, it is made up of metal. So this basically surrounds the sand which is molded here. So ability to hold or stick with the walls of the metallic mold is known as the adhesiveness of the sand. So cohesiveness will be the property of the sand particles to hold together among themselves, and adhesiveness will be the property of the molding sand to adhere to the flask, which is of a different material, say metal. So now we will see what are the different contents of the green sand. So green sand is predominantly consisting of sand, which is also known as the silica, SiO2. So this is a refractory material having quite high melting temperature. Then clay is added, which acts as a binder. Although the sand can hold, these particles can hold the shape together, but they do not have the sufficient strength to take the forces which are developed while the solidification is happening. So in order to provide that strength, a binding agent is added in between, which is known as the clay. And this clay is added in the range of 10 to 20%. And it largely affects the strength of the mold, means strength is needed while handling the mold, and it also affects the permeability of the molding sand. So permeability, as I discussed, is basically the ability of the sand to allow the gases to escape from the molten metal. Then is water. What is the next component is the water, which is added in the range of 3 to 6%. What the function of water is basically to activate this clay, which is added in here, and it also affects the flowability and strength. The content of moisture is basically useful to activate this clay, the binding property of the clay. And lastly, we have some organic additives or which are added to provide the permeability and collapsibility. So as I already mentioned that when you have the binder particles in between, so additives are added So these additives basically they will provide the collapsibility and permeability because they are generally organic based, so they burn off very quickly. Hence, when they burn off, so they leave behind the pores or the space for the sand to collapse, thus giving the important properties of permeability and collapsibility. So a good molding sand will have an optimum value of the sand size particles, amount of bonding agent, moisture content, and organic matter. It is not that you increase it to a very high percentage that you will get very good properties. We will see how these properties are changed when you change the content of binder or additive or moisture. So most important type of clay which is used is either fire clay or bentonite. So this is used selected depending on the melting temperature of the metals. So fire clay has a melting point of around 1750 to 1787 degrees centigrade, and bentonite has a melting point of 1250 to 1300 degrees Celsius. So bentonite, it can be either sodium or calcium based, and bentonite can absorb water, just increasing the bonding property. Then you will see here the role of water. So water is basically primarily added to activate this clay. So when you activate the clay, what happens basically, the clay provides the necessary plasticity and strength. So plasticity and strength is basically important to basically hold the shape even during handling and when the molten material is getting solidified. And the amount of water is also very important because you see here in this graph. So this graph is showing the variation of four properties: flowability, permeability, deformation, and strength. So what happens here, that as the percentage of water is basically increased, so certain properties like flowability, it first reduces and then increases. So why this happens, you can understand if you mix water with sand to a certain extent, it will help to flow. Then after that, it will form a slurry, which will be flowing very quickly and not desired. Then we have permeability. So at a certain percentage, say this 8%, the permeability, it increases. Beyond that, it decreases. So what happens, as the content of water will be too high, so the heat which is carried with the molten metal may not be sufficient to evaporate it. So at that time, the water molecules are going to stay in between the sand without getting evaporated, thus affecting the permeability. And similarly, the deformation, it will also increase as the content of water will increase, because the strength may the sand may not be able to hold the strength, which also decreases beyond this 8%. So the content of water is very important, and normal percentage of water is between 2 to 8%. So what you have to remember here, that role of water is to only activate the activate the clay which holds the sand particles together, as it is the binder which is added there. And beyond 8%, there will be decrease in the strength and formability, so which we do not want. So always the water percentage is kept between 2 to 8%. Then we have additives. I have been discussing these additives are very, very important to provide permeability and collapsibility. Just to give you a recap, this is giving two properties: permeability and collapsibility. So collapsibility and permeability is basically provided by these additives which are organic based, as they burn off very quickly when they come in contact with the molten metal. So additives like molasses, cereal, ethyl glycol, some of them are like iron oxide is also there, coal dust, sawdust, silica dust, cereals, these are added. So certain additives also provide properties like hot strength, surface finish, and collapsibility also. So generally these are added in very less percentage, but they provide these two important properties to the molding sand. Next, we move to cores, chaplets, and chills. So these are another important aspect in sand casting. So what are cores? So cores are basically the objects which are used to make internal cavities or features which cannot be alone produced by pattern. So as I discussed earlier also, if we intend to produce a block with a hole inside. So in this case, we will be using a core basically in the pattern. So core will be made up of the sand itself, but in the core sand, what will happen? It will also be made up of sand. And binder content, sorry, the additive contents will be higher. Additive content and binder content both will be on the higher side compared to the molding sand. So why this is there? So because the cores, they are subjected to more severe thermal conditions and mechanical conditions, because core is now getting surrounded by the molten material on all the sides. So in order to get that type of property so that it is able to hold the shape even when surrounded by molten material on all sides, so core has to have very high properties compared to the molding sand. So what is important here, that what is the application of core? It is basically to create cavities or internal features. They are also made up of same sand, but in that the additives and binder are on the higher side. Why this is done? Because cores are subjected to more severe conditions of mechanical and thermal conditions. So in order to have those properties, the additive and binder content is on the higher side, and this basically provides higher strength and higher refractiveness to the than the molding sand. So properties of the which are needed in the core here are basically, you can see here, strength, refractiveness, low gas emission. It should be permeable, and it should also have the property of collapsibility. So next are basically the different types of core sand which are there. So core sand basically comprises of these binders and additives which are on the higher side. So, which are on the higher side. So we have the silica sand which is used in coarse or fine grains. So coarse is used in steel foundries, and finer sands are used with cast iron or non-ferrous alloys. So binders which are added, they get burnt away as I explained earlier, thus collapsing the core during cooling. Sometimes some oil may also be used with the core, but it is of very less percentage, say 1%, and water of between 2 to 6% is also added with the core. So here you can see how the sand and oil, so this is basically sand and oil ratio, how this ratio, as you increase the content of oil in it, how different properties basically change, like hardness, permeability, and strength and all. So these are the different type of properties which are affected by the content of oil in the sand. Next are the core prints. So core prints are basically the extensions in the core. So as you see here, these are the extension of the core, which are used to provide position to the core to hold it securely in the mold. So this is the cavity here. This is the core print here basically. So this core print is basically staying in this sand here. So this is the sand. So this, when you hold this core print in the sand, so this portion basically helps to secure the core and locate the core in the molding sand. So it has to be properly designed to take the weight of the core and the metallostatic pressure which is developed because of the density difference between the molten material and the surrounding sand. So a lot of forces are developed. So this core print should be designed in such a way that it is able to hold the core in the position without any movement, so that during the solidification, the proper cavity is produced and no defects are introduced. So next are chaplets. So chaplets are basically metallic supports which are provided to position and support the core. So these I sections that you see here, so these are the chaplets. So these are the metallic supports. Please remember, these are made up of metals, and specifically speaking, so these are made up of the same metal which will be cast. So this is suppose the spruce, and so this all this cavity will be basically surrounded by the molten material. So it is very important to select the chaplet of the same material which will be actually cast in the cavity, because upon coming in contact with the molten material, so heat of the molten material will be sufficient to melt and fuse the chaplet in it together. So the composition of the chaplet has to be similar to the material which is being cast, and the objective of providing the chaplet is basically it is a metallic support again to position and support the core, especially in large castings. So in large castings where the size of cavity is big, or alone the core print, so here we also have the core print, but the core print may not be sufficient to hold the core. So in those scenarios we use the chaplets, and chaplets are metallic structures which support and position the core inside the cavity, and they should be large, should be not very different than the material which is being cast, and they should not be large enough so they do not melt completely, or they should not be small enough so that they fuse on the surface of the cast product. So an optimum size has to be selected. So these are also available in wide range of sizes, shapes, depending on how is the application. So you will see here that we have different type of chaplets, like this radiator chaplets, double-headed chaplets and all. So basically, based on their shape and all, so they have been given different names, and different types of these chaplets are basically useful for casting different type of products. Depending on the requirement, we can select the appropriate chaplet. Next are the chills. So chills are again very important basically. So what are chills? So chills as actually by themselves, they do not form any part of the cast product. But what are these? So these are again metallic pieces with very high heat capacity and high thermal conductivity. So these are metallic pieces, one thing is very clear, but they have an important property of high heat capacity and thermal conductivity. So the idea is basically to place these chills in the mold. So please remember, they will be placed in the mold. So I will just give you an example here. So if this is the cast product which is inside this mold, I'm just showing you the objective of the chill. So you see here these green boxes. So these green boxes are known as the chill blocks or chills, simply chills, and this one is basically the cast product. So chills are placed in such a way in the mold. Please remember, they will be placed in the mold, not in the mold cavity. So the objective is basically, since they have very high thermal conductivity, very high thermal capacity, so they will be helpful to develop a suitable temperature gradient. Please see here, they develop a suitable temperature gradient which helps to promote a directional solidification by accelerating localized cooling. So what they do is, since they have high thermal conductivity, so they are able to quickly take away the heat from the molten metal. So once they take away the heat from the molten metal, so the change in phase will happen very quickly. So it will go from liquid to solid phase quickly. So chills are nothing but when they extract the heat out, so they give a very they can be placed in such a way so that the directional solidification is achieved. So directional solidification is the pattern of solidification where the riser it solidifies in the last, and the rest of the casting it solidifies before the riser, and this basically also increases the effective riser feeding distance, so number of risers are reduced in the casting. So objective of the chill is basically to provide, as the name itself is telling, to chill the casting. So means to remove heat or to reduce temperature quickly. So how this can happen? Because sand itself, it does not have a very high thermal conductivity, but when we place certain metallic blocks which have this property of high thermal conductivity in the sand near the casting, if it is a quite thick casting, you place it away. So in that scenario, the heat transfer will not be very effective. So it has to be placed very near to the cavity so that it quickly extracts the heat, thereby maintaining a suitable temperature gradient. Then we move to the next aspect of the casting, which is on melting, pouring, solidification, mold removal, and cleaning. So melting is a very important aspect in any casting process. So melting is not just simply you melt the metals, so but they also be needed sometimes to alloy the metal before casting, and then we should have a proper arrangement that is a suitable furnace which provides the proper temperature, basically to control the fluidity of the process or of the object. It should provide molten material in desired quantity and quality at a reasonable cost. So we will see different arrangements how we can basically melt the molten material in the casting. So to do this, we have different type of furnaces available to us. So we will discuss some characteristics of some of the important furnaces. So first is the electric arc furnace. So electric arc furnace is basically a furnace which consists of these arc electrodes, and here is basically the molten metal. So these electrodes are connected to a high voltage supply, and when the high voltage supply is connected to this electrode, and the lower from the lower it is connected to this metallic or the metal which has to be melted. Upon passage of electricity, the gap between the electrode is basically ionized. So basically they create a arc there. This is similar to as an arc which is used for say welding. But in this case, since the applied voltage is quite high, so this arc is sufficiently maintained, and this arc it is a plasma state which can quickly melt the molten material. So it can quickly melt these metals which have to be cast. So this arc can be continuously kept on, and all the material which is provided can be melted quickly. And this type of furnaces, they have a very high melting rate, means they can quickly melt a high quantity of the metals. They do not produce any pollution since there is no combustion taking place. And they also have the ability to hold the molten material for quite long time. So these are very big furnaces, very large furnaces. So they can hold several tons of molten metal. And when required, so these furnaces can be tilted. So this is the tapping spout from which the molten metal can be then put into a ladle, or it can be put into the mold. Next is the induction furnace. So induction furnace is basically uses the principle of eddy currents. So in this case, we have high frequency alternating current which is supplied using these copper induction coils. So this is similar to as what we observe with the induction cooktops, which is used for cooking. So in this case, these induction copper coils, they induce the eddy currents in the molten material here inside. And since this molten material also gives an important ability of electromagnetic steering. So these eddy currents, so they are not a very uniform type of a means they are continuously changing. So they give this steering action. So this is very useful when we are interested to make alloys, because this steering action gives an excellent mixing capabilities to different elements. And in this case, the copper coils, they completely surround the crucible. So this crucible is made up of a refractory material, say clay or other additives. Then are the crucible furnaces, where the heat may be generated because of the combustion between some combustible material like coal or oil. So cupola furnace is basically an older form of a furnace where it used coal, and oil or natural gas can also be used. But you can very well understand these type of crucible or cupola furnaces, since they are based on burning hydrocarbon fuels, so they will cause environmental pollution. So these days, more popular are the electric arc or the induction furnace are more popular these days. The other two types are now getting obsolete. So once the casting is complete, so what is done is basically We need to separate out the riser and gate from the cast product. We need to clean the surface of the cast product for any defects, or we have to also inspect it. So cleaning and finishing is done. So this is done using compressed air or some mechanical based arrangement like wire brush and all. So those are used to clean the casting. And once the casting is cleaned, it is then inspected for different defects if there are or not. So with this, I will stop for today's class. And now we can take few questions if you have any.